Welcome to my channel. Please support with subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. The sound of rain hitting the windshield felt like music against the silence between them. Emma glanced at her father, David, who was focused on the empty road, stretching through the mountains of Colorado. The sky was silver and heavy, the world outside wrapped in mist. They hadn't planned this trip together. It just happened. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago. And though Emma tried to fill the quiet at home with college, friends, and distractions, nothing truly helped. When David suggested they take a short road trip before winter, she agreed. Maybe it was time to reconnect. Maybe it was time to heal. Looks like we'll have to stop soon, David said, checking the GPS. The fog's getting worse. Emma nodded, her eyes catching a faint reflection of herself in the window, tired, distant, and yet hopeful. There was something about being on the road with him, miles away from the noise of life, that made her feel close again, not just to him, but to the person she used to be. They pulled into a small mountain lodge that looked like it hadn't seen many guests in years. A wooden sign swayed in the wind. Silver Pines Inn inside. The air smelled like pine and coffee. The woman at the counter smiled. Only one room left. With a double bed, she said kindly. David hesitated, glancing at Emma. But the rain outside had turned fierce. That's fine, Emma said softly before he could speak. We'll take it. Their room was small but cozy, with soft yellow lights and a fireplace flickering in the corner. A single bed took up most of the space. Emma laughed lightly, trying to ease the tension. Guess we're back to family vacations. Huh? David smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides years of emotion behind it. Feels like old times. They ordered dinner downstairs, and as the night deepened, they really talked for the first time in years. David spoke about how hard it had been after her mother died, how the house had felt too big, too empty. Emma shared how she'd tried to move on, but every corner of her life seemed haunted by what used to be. The warmth of the fire softened their words, and for a while, the distance between them faded. When they went back to their room, the wind outside had turned wild. Snow began to fall, quiet and endless. Emma sat by the window, watching flakes collect on the glass. Do you ever think she's watching us? She asked, suddenly. David looked at her, the little girl he once carried on his shoulders, now grown. Searching for answers he couldn't give. I think she never really left, he said softly. She's in everything we still love. The room felt sacred, like time had slowed. The storm outside howled, and the power flickered. Guess we're stuck here, David murmured as the lights went out completely. Emma laughed quietly in the dark. That's our luck. They found a flashlight and 2 extra blankets. The air was cold, but neither complained. The bed, though small, was warm. They lay awake for a while, not speaking, just listening to the storm's rhythm. Somewhere in that silence, something shifted, not in a wrong way, but in an emotional way, like 2 souls remembering. They once shared the same heartbeat of a family that was now broken. Emma felt tears rise. She didn't even know why. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was grief. Or maybe the comfort of not feeling alone for the first time in a long while. David noticed her trembling and whispered, "You okay?" "I just miss her," she said. He reached out, his hand finding hers in the dark. "Me too." The moment felt unplanned, raw and pure. The kind of closeness that wasn't about romance or anything forbidden, but about love that had survived loss. About 2 people who had lost their way trying to find each other again. The storm raged harder, and she rested her head against his shoulder. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat was grounding. "Dad," she whispered. "Yeah, thanks for not giving up on us." He smiled faintly, unseen but deeply felt. "Never will." And in that stillness, 2 lonely hearts, father and daughter, found a fragile peace neither had known since the day everything changed. Outside, the storm began to ease. The lodge lights flickered back on, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet room. Emma didn't know it then, but this night, this unexpected trip, this shared silence would change everything between them, not in a way that would break them, but in a way that would remind them what love truly meant, messy, human, and healing. The morning light crept through the thin curtains, painting soft gold lines across the room. The storm had passed, leaving the world quiet, almost sacred. Snow blanketed the trees outside, and the mountains looked like they were made of glass. Emma woke slowly, realizing her hand was still resting near her father's. They had fallen asleep like that, side by side, like 2 weary travelers, finally at peace. For a moment, she didn't move. There was comfort in that quiet stillness. Something rare and fragile. David stirred and opened his eyes, blinking at the sunlight. "Morning," he said, voice still rough from sleep. "Morning," she replied softly, smiling. It felt strange, not uncomfortable, but new. There was a calm between them, the kind that comes after years of storms. Both real and emotional. He sat up and looked out the window. "Looks like the roads are covered. We might be here a while." Emma joined him at the window. The view was breathtaking. Tall pines dusted in white, and sunlight bouncing off the snow like 1,000 tiny stars. "I don't mind staying," she said. "It's beautiful." Downstairs, the small lodge cafe was alive with the smell of coffee and maple syrup. A few travelers were already eating breakfast. The warmth of the fireplace and soft chatter made everything feel normal, something neither of them had felt in a long time. They sat together by the window, watching the snowflakes drift lazily outside. David smiled as he poured her coffee. "You used to sneak sips when you were 12, he said with a chuckle. Emma laughed. "I thought it made me look grown up." He looked at her for a moment, his eyes softening. "You are grown up now. I just forget sometimes." The weight of his words lingered. She saw something in his expression, pride, love, and a trace of sadness. Maybe every parent eventually realized their child had become an adult without them noticing. They spent most of the morning exploring the lodge grounds. The air was crisp, their footprints marking trails in the snow. Emma found herself talking more freely about her studies, her fears, the way she still dreamt of her mother. And David listened, really listened, not as a father trying to fix things, but as someone who finally understood how much time they had lost in silence. At one point, they stopped near a frozen lake. The reflection of the mountains shimmered on the ice. "She would have loved this," Emma whispered. David nodded slowly. "She always wanted to come here. I just never found the time." Emma slipped her gloved hand into his. "You did now." Their eyes met, a small wordless exchange that said more than 100 apologies ever could. As the day passed, the weather began to turn again. Gray clouds rolled back over the sky. The innkeeper warned them that another storm might hit by nightfall. Back in their room, the atmosphere was quieter, heavier, not with sadness, but with reflection. David sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Emma sat across from him, cross-legged on the rug. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think you didn't care anymore. After Mom died, you shut down. I thought you wanted to forget us." He didn't look up right away. "I wasn't trying to forget. I was trying not to fall apart." Something in his voice broke her. She'd never heard him sound so human, so unguarded. "I should have said something," he continued. "I should have told you how much I was struggling. Instead, I pretended I was fine." Emma's eyes welled up. "We both did." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shared pain, forgiveness, and an understanding that love, even when broken, could still mend itself. When the second storm hit, they didn't panic. This time, they lit candles before the lights went out and wrapped themselves in the same blankets. They talked until late about her childhood, his mistakes, her dreams. It was as if the storm outside had trapped time for them, giving them a rare second chance to speak all the words they'd left unsaid. Then, as the night deepened, Emma asked the question that had been sitting on her heart for years. "Do you ever think you'll fall in love again?" David looked surprised. "I don't know," he said after a pause. "I think part of me still lives in the past." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe love isn't just about moving on. Maybe it's about remembering without pain." He nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe you're right." The fire crackled softly between them. For the first time in years, they both felt warm, not from the heat, but from the feeling that they were no longer strangers to each other. As the wind howled outside, Emma leaned her head gently on his shoulder again. This time, it wasn't grief that connected them. It was love, quiet, patient, and healing. But what neither of them knew was that this unexpected trip meant to escape their old wounds was about to take a turn that would test everything they had rebuilt. Because by morning, a single letter, one that had been waiting for years, would find its way to them, and nothing would be the same again. The morning came softly, with sunlight stretching across the snow like a new beginning. The storm had passed, and the world outside the lodge was shining white, quiet, calm, untouched. Emma woke to the smell of coffee. Her father was already dressed, sitting by the window with 2 mugs. The early light made the lines on his face gentler somehow. Less tired, more at peace. "Morning," she said, rubbing her eyes. He smiled. "Morning, kiddo. I didn't want to wake you. You looked like you were finally sleeping well." For the first time in years, the constant ache in her heart had softened, replaced by something warmer, the sense that maybe, just maybe, they were finding their way back. They packed slowly, laughing about how their clothes smelled like smoke from the fireplace and coffee from the cafe downstairs. It felt simple. It felt right, but just as they were about to leave, the woman at the front desk called out, holding a small envelope. "Sir, this came in for you this morning. I think it was sent ahead from your old address." David frowned, confused. He took the envelope and turned it over. No return name, only his in faded ink. Who even sends mail like this anymore? Emma joked, but something about the old handwriting made her curious. He opened it slowly, and as his eyes moved across the page, his expression changed: surprise, then disbelief, then something like pain. "Dad, what is it?" He didn't speak at first. He just handed her the letter. The paper was yellowed slightly, and the handwriting was delicate, familiar. Somehow, it was from her mother. "If you're reading this, it means I never got to tell you the truth. There's something Emma deserves to know, something we both hid to protect her." Emma stopped reading, her heart racing. "What is this?" she whispered. David ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. "I don't know how to explain it. I thought she destroyed this before she passed." They sat down in the small lobby, snow still falling gently outside as the world seemed to stop around them. The letter went on to explain how her mother had written it years ago, during a time when their marriage was struggling. How she'd discovered something that changed everything about their family. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't scandal. It was something deeper, a truth hidden out of love. Her mother had been ill for much longer than anyone knew. She had hidden it from both of them, hoping they wouldn't spend her final years worrying. She'd written the letter as a way to tell the truth when she no longer could. But there was more. At the bottom of the letter, there was a line that made Emma's hands shake. "If you and Emma ever find yourselves lost, take the road back to Aspen Lake. That's where everything began and where you'll both find peace again." Emma looked up. "Aspen Lake. Didn't you two go there on your honeymoon?" David nodded slowly. "Yeah, I haven't been there since." Silence filled the room again, not the kind that hurts, but the kind that means a decision is waiting. He folded the letter carefully, then looked at her with something fierce in his eyes, a mixture of grief and purpose. "Maybe this trip wasn't an accident," he said softly. "Maybe she wanted us to find this." Emma swallowed hard. "Then let's go. Let's finish what she started." The road to Aspen Lake was long and winding, but the closer they got, the lighter everything felt. The world around them shimmered in the winter sunlight, and for the first time since her mother's passing, Emma felt a strange sense of calm, as if her mother was guiding them there. They reached the lake by sunset. The water was half frozen, the air still and quiet. The old wooden dock stood just as David remembered it, aged, but untouched. He parked the car and stepped out slowly, breathing in the cold air. "We used to sit here for hours," he murmured. She loved this place. Emma joined him by the dock. They stood side by side, watching the sky turn gold and pink over the icy water. Then David pulled something from his coat pocket, a small velvet box. Emma looked at him, confused. "What's that?" He opened it gently. Inside was a silver locket, her mother's. "She gave me this before she got sick. Told me to keep it until the right time came to give it to you." His voice broke a little. "I think this is that time." Emma took it carefully, tears already blurring her vision. Inside the locket was a tiny picture, her mother smiling, her arms around both of them. On the other side, a single line engraved in small, perfect letters. "Find your way back to love." The words hit her heart like a whisper from the past. Emma leaned into her father's shoulder, clutching the locket close. "She knew we'd need this trip," she said softly. "She knew we'd need each other." David nodded, his eyes glistening. "She always knew more than I did." They stood there in silence as the first stars appeared above the lake. The grief that had once felt endless now seemed to open into something gentler. A reminder that love doesn't end when a person is gone. It lingers, it changes, but it never disappears. Just when the air felt still, David's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and froze. "What is it?" Emma asked. He turned the screen toward her. It was a message from an unknown number. "Unknown. I know what your wife never told you. Meet me at the lake tomorrow before noon. Come alone." Emma stared at the message, her heart pounding. Who would send that? David looked out toward the dark water, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," he said slowly, "but it seems your mother's story isn't over yet." The cold wind swept across the lake, and in that moment, Emma knew their journey had just taken a turn they never expected. The morning air at Aspen Lake was crisp and sharp, with frost sparkling on the dock like tiny diamonds. Emma shivered slightly and pulled her coat tighter, glancing at her father. David looked tense, his jaw tight as he stared at the horizon. The message from last night burned in their minds. I know what your wife never told you. Meet me at the lake tomorrow before noon. Come alone. Do you think we should go? Emma asked quietly. David hesitated. We need answers. But I don't like the idea of going alone. Emma shook her head. No, Dad, we face this together. Always. They walked slowly toward the far edge of the lake, where the trees created a small, secluded clearing. The water glistened beneath the rising sun, and the snow muffled the sound of their footsteps. A figure emerged from behind the trees. A man, mid-40s, with kind eyes but a serious expression. He held a small envelope in his hand. David stepped forward. You sent the message. The man nodded. Yes. My name is Michael. I was a close friend of your wife's. There are things you never knew about her illness. About the choices she made to protect Emma. And you too. Emma's heart raced. What do you mean? Michael handed David the envelope. Inside were letters, old medical reports, and photographs, evidence of how carefully Emma's mother had hidden her illness. But there was one thing more startling than any of it. A diary, written in her mother's delicate handwriting, filled with her fears, hopes, and the secret she had carried all these years. David opened it, his hands trembling. Emma leaned in to read over his shoulder. If I am gone, I need them to know that love isn't about never leaving or never making mistakes. It's about protecting each other, even when it hurts. There are choices I made that may confuse them, but I did them out of love. Emma felt tears blur her vision. She really thought about everything, she whispered. Every single thing. Michael nodded. She wanted you both to find each other again, even if it meant revealing things slowly, piece by piece. That's why she sent you here. David closed the diary and looked at Emma. She never wanted us to suffer. She wanted us to heal together. Emma reached for his hand. We are, Dad. We really are. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the soft waves against the frozen shore. The past felt heavy, but it also felt like it was finally letting go. Then Michael spoke again. There's one more thing. Your wife left something for you both. Something to remind you that family isn't just about blood or loss. It's about moments like these. He handed them a small wooden box, carved with delicate patterns. Inside were 2 silver rings, not for marriage, but for remembrance, engraved simply. Together in love, always. Emma looked up at her father. She wanted us to remember that we still have each other. David smiled, a genuine, tender smile. And we do. We really do. The wind picked up, swirling snow around them, and for a moment, it felt as if her mother's spirit was there. Watching, smiling, Emma pressed the ring to her lips, whispering, Thank you. Michael nodded. She believed in you both. She knew you'd find your way back. As he walked away, leaving them alone by the lake, Emma and David sat together on the dock. Side by side. Dad, Emma said softly, I know she's gone, but I feel like she's still with us, guiding us. David wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I feel it too, and I think she'd be proud of us, proud that we found each other again. The sun rose higher, painting the frozen lake gold. Emma felt a peace she hadn't known since her mother died. It wasn't just the snow or the quiet of the lake, it was the understanding that they could move forward. Together, David broke the silence with a chuckle. You know, I never thought a road trip in a storm would lead to this. Emma laughed softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. Neither did I, but I'm glad it did. The lake reflected the sky, clear and bright, as if the world itself was giving them a second chance. And in that moment, Emma realized that their journey wasn't just about finding secrets or truths. It was about discovering the love and bond that had always been there, quietly waiting to be remembered. But as the wind whispered across the lake, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't completely finished. That, even though the diary had revealed so much, there was one last secret. One more piece of the past that could change everything again. The sun had risen fully over Aspen Lake, melting some of the frost and casting warm golden light across the snow. Emma and David sat quietly on the dock, the silver rings from her mother still in their hands. For a moment, it felt like everything had settled. The diary, the letters, the revelations, they had all shown them the love that had always been there, even in the shadows of grief. But as Emma traced the delicate patterns on the wooden box, a folded note slipped from beneath it. David picked it up. Another one, he murmured. Emma opened it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable, her mother's, small and precise. If you are reading this, it means you have begun to heal. But there is one final truth you must know. Love is not just about the past. It is about the choices you make now. Protect each other, always, and never let fear keep you from feeling everything fully. I trust you both to do this. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She's still guiding us. David nodded, his voice thick with emotion. She always has. The moment felt sacred, like the lake itself had paused to hold their grief and their joy together. Emma leaned against her father, feeling the warmth of his presence, not as a child leaning on her parent, but as to people who had rediscovered each other, stronger and closer than ever. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't want this trip to end. I feel like we found something we were missing." David smiled softly. "Neither do I, and maybe that's the point. We don't have to let it end. We can carry this, the closeness, the love, the understanding with us wherever we go." Emma laughed softly, wiping away a tear. "I guess a stormy road trip was exactly what we needed." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the frozen shore. The wind carried no threat this time, only a sense of peace, as if nature itself had witnessed their healing. "Do you think Mom knew it would take all this to bring us back together?" Emma asked. David chuckled softly. Knowing her, absolutely. She always had a plan, even if it was a little roundabout. They stood, hands linked, and walked along the edge of the lake. The snow crunched under their feet, the cold air sharp and clean, but inside, they felt a warmth that could not be touched by weather or time. As they reached the car, David stopped and looked at Emma. "I know this trip wasn't supposed to be like this, but it turned out better than I ever imagined. We've faced the past, we've understood it, and now, we can move forward." Emma smiled, her heart full. "Together." "Together," David echoed. The drive back from Aspen Lake was quiet in the best way. No words were needed. They had shared everything that mattered: grief, love, forgiveness, and hope. And now, they were free to carry it forward. By the time they reached home, the sky was painted with twilight hues of pink and gold. Emma looked out the car window, feeling a sense of closure she had never thought possible. Her mother's letters, her diary, and the silver rings were more than reminders of loss. They were symbols of love that endured, guiding her and her father toward each other again. That night, back at home, Emma placed the locket around her neck and held her father's hand. The room was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. It was full of memories, full of love, full of life, and in that quiet moment, they both understood the truth her mother had always known. Love doesn't end with loss. It grows, it heals, and it brings people together in ways they never imagined. As Emma drifted to sleep, she felt a gentle peace settle over her. She knew there would be more storms in life, more challenges and moments of doubt, but she also knew that as long as she had her father, as long as they had each other, they could face anything. The unexpected trip had changed everything, not by giving them answers alone, but by reminding them of the love that had never left, and the bond that could never be broken. And for the first time in years, Emma felt completely whole. The end.